Hey, this is Cole again. I want to apologize for the previous video. I did it unscripted and everything like that. That's changed this time. I do have a script written down and I am glad to take more criticism. I'm very thankful for the criticism and feedback that was given last time, both in the comments and off of poll. Thank you very much to both of you. And now I'm going to do a much more streamlined analysis of individualism versus collectivism. First, I'd like to go ahead and define the terms. Individualism, that I think both me and Sargon can agree on this definition. I'm going to put these definitions into premise form so they can become more easy to either refute or validate, etc. Individualism in premise form is all people are individuals with their own will and motivations. I don't deny this, and I think this premise is correct. Now, Sargon's definition of collectivism, judging by how he does it in premise form, is all people are safely judged by categories and demography. Now, this is just wrong. I don't agree with the definition, and I don't agree with the premise either. The actual definition, and definition that I'm going to be using of collectivism in premise form, is while in principle everyone can become a person and have their will become the primary motivator, it is the case that many will not achieve this state and will be motivated by outside factors and innate tendencies such as habits and genetics. This definition actually is not mutually exclusive with individualism. I stated it's true because, in principle, they do have their own will, but they do not tend to act upon that will in the majority of cases, and instead act on outside environmental or internal tendencies and habits and factors. The collectivism that I am putting out is not mutually exclusive because it adds real-life analytical prediction into it. If individualism is adding a premise, then collectivism is just adding a second premise onto that in order to reach a conclusion. Now, the main problem Sargon has with this idea of collectivism that he espouses, which I firmly deny, is he always brings up denying agency. He always says it's wrong to deny people their agency. Now, if we just look at any animal, it's absolutely ridiculous to come to a judgment about the animal and then claim that you're denying the animal's agency. Yes, some animals do have a will. They have shown signs through various testing and everything that they have tastes and preferences and a will of their own. The animals that show logic are more intelligent, and this intelligence leads to a better expression of their will and a better, more concrete example of motivations within the animal. We can always see that the more increased the intelligence, there is an increased likelihood that they will act according to their will and not simply environmental reactionaryism or just innate genetic tendencies and habits. Humans are still animals. They're more intelligent animals, but humans are animals nonetheless. When you're analyzing all these animals and things like that, the reason that people are always, worried about animals is they always say things such as, an animal is unpredictable. You don't know what that animal's gonna do and everything like that. And that's true. We can, again, apply this to humans as well. We don't have complete information on what a human will do. There's no way that you can perfectly understand what that human is going to choose to do. Because we have incomplete information, we must rely on likelihoods and averages in order to assess these situations involving animals of all kinds, including humans. Now, how does this work? How do you apply collectivism into judgments and in general policy? If all people had complete control of their will, and it was the primary motivator of all actions, then collectivism would be basically fulfilled. It would be unnecessary and everyone could just not heed it and everything like that, and individualism would rule and we'd have a truly utopic world. But it's just not the case. Not all people act upon reason. We do not have perfect information upon what they will act upon and how they will react. So in this case, we have to apply collectivism. The fundamentals of applying collectivism are just basic things such as cost-benefit analysis, risk assessment, and statistical analysis in the general thing. An example of this is you're at your home and you have a knock at the door. You go to your door and you look through the little peephole or maybe through a side window, and there's a bunch of people there. They all look nice, they're in their sweater vests and wearing nice, brightly colored, happy colors, and all wearing smiles. But there's two people in the back wearing masks and brandishing weapons and look really suspicious. Now, applying collectivism, if you just judged every single individual, then you would just say, okay, I want all the friendly individuals to come into my house. But you can't do that. It's a single choice of whether to open the door or not to open the door. You must say, what is the cost versus the benefits of opening that door and dealing with this whole group? Even if the majority of them, even if it's just an exception that one of them is violent, it's just not a smart idea in order to let one violent person in at the benefit of letting however many more friendly people in. Just because they're the exception to the rule doesn't mean that that exception can be overlooked as being a part of the group. This takes into account risk assessment of the situation. Here's a more concrete example. If you want to build a house, you look through various contractors and everything like that, and you come across two groups. One group, looks like a solid bunch of guys, and you look at the other group, and they take the initiative, contact you early. They say, hey, we think we can do a much better job than the other guys. We can even negotiate, maybe knock down the project cost by a few $100s. But I have to tell you that one of the people in my construction crew is a pyromaniac. Now, don't get too worried about it. He has been getting help for this, and we've been helping him, and, he has been doing really well in therapy. And if he joins the project, he has a somewhat likely probability of not burning down the project or causing harm to your property and everything. So give us back a call and maybe we can get this thing knocked out easily, quickly, and cheaply. Now, when you're analyzing these two groups, even if this group is cheaper and more affordable, why would you just ignore risk assessment and cost-benefit analysis because the guy is the exception to the behavior of the rest of the group? Why on earth would you pick that group? It's just a matter of basic common sense. You don't want to bring a murderer into your house just because you get 15 non-murderers. I would like to read a passage from a book which quite accurately summarizes Sargon's position. Vox Day's book, Social Justice Warriors Always Lie, abbreviated SJWs. In this, he talks about one of his strategic principles, specifically his seventh. He says, moderates are the people who are nominally on your side, who don't have the courage to take on the enemy directly, but never hesitate to offer advice and criticism to those who do. They generally mean well, but they have a tendency to believe that goodwill, hand-holding, and being open-minded will inspire even the most lunatic, hate-filled social justice warrior to see sweet reason. Even worse, this belief often causes them to attack their punitive allies in order to prevent their allies from attacking the enemy, since attacking the enemy would get in the way of rapprochement that the moderate is certain will happen with the very next concession. Moderates are usually nice people who want to think well of everyone, and they make for very good ambassadors and diplomats. Unfortunately, they usually prefer appeasement to offense, and they are far more inclined to shoot at their own side than they are at the enemy. Now, I believe this fits Sargon very well with the idea that he just wants to sit in the middle, espouse logic will end everything, all hostilities will be easily solved. Now, we are at a cultural war with social justice warriors. We do not want them in our society. They will poison it, they will kill it, and they will act only on their own ends. To those who have denied reason, arguments are impossible. There's simply no arguing with them. Once they said, your logic doesn't apply because... No, there's no because after that. Either the logic's right or it's not, and when they go further beyond and reject the idea of logic being right or not being the primary factor in their decisions, then they simply must be gotten rid of. I thank you all for listening to this streamlined version. You can contact me and follow me on Twitter at Cole_roll. I will leave a credit for Vox in the description and also Sargon's channel in the description. And thank you very much. Have a pleasant and wonderful day. Death to the social justice warriors.
So tell me, you lived here for 30-something years. They're classifying this fire as a potential hate crime. What do you think about that?
I think that if people just stayed in their own side of town, their own neighborhood, that things like that wouldn't happen.
Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, every race and color has their own section of Buffalo almost, so if they just stay on their own side, things like this wouldn't happen. People in these neighborhoods don't want those type of people moving down here and ruining the property value and destroying the neighborhood, so when things like that happen, it shouldn't be such a shock.
What do you mean by those types of people?
Minorities, African Americans.
So are you suggesting that they should stay on the east side rather than coming here to South Buffalo?
Well, they've already wrecked the east side. Why should they come down to the south side and wreck that neighborhood?
Do you think that by saying these things, people on the other side of the city get offended? Do you think that there's some sort of a bias, potentially?
A lot of people feel this way. They just won't say it.
But you are.
Yeah.
Why are you coming out and saying these things?
Because I own a home and I see what happens when they move into the neighborhood. Property value goes down, kids on the corner, crime goes up. The east side used to be a beautiful place. Look what they did to that.
Do you think that there's an issue, though, in what you're saying?
Well, I'm sure there is, but, I mean, you got to take a look at why it's an issue.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, they just ruin neighborhoods.
I guess what I'm getting at is that you're generalizing tremendously. These people might have just been here looking for a different way of life, a better way of life.
Maybe people are afraid after you let one family in, then more of them come in. You know, that's just how it is around here.
All right. Do you think there's anything wrong with what you're saying?
I don't feel there's anything wrong with it. A lot of people would feel wrong about it, but I don't.
I'm just saying that when we die, there's going to be a planet for the French, a planet for the Chinese, and we'll all be a lot happier.
Mr. Gumble, you're upsetting me.
No, I'm not.